It's well known that big budget AAA games are the only way. Unless you're like me and you have a crippling game addiction and the only way to get by is to scroll through Steam looking for your next hit. If so, a trend you would notice is the amount of indie horror games that are using retro low poly graphics. Now that could be explained away by a lack of budget and a lack of manpower. It could also even be a lack of experience by the developer. The lower the poly, the easier it is to hide flaws. But what if low poly was just a choice? Do you think retro graphics are more of a tool or more of a mask for developers? Could a horror game even be scary or engaging with dookie graphics? Let's be real, jank is not a compliment. Use the word when we're talking about something that's poorly made, right? So referring to a game as janky in most cases is a bad thing. But when we're talking about a modern game that's made to look like it was made for the PS1 or the N64, things could still feel poorly made, but in the right way. The biggest benefit that jank gives these games is the suspension of disbelief. Yeah, most horror games have some level of goofiness to them, so you kind of already have to suspend your disbelief when you're playing one. But what I mean by suspending disbelief is, it's not crazy to think that you might not actually be safe in your hiding spot, or that seemingly clear area in front of you might spawn some kind of creep. Now, I think we can all agree that not feeling safe adds a bit of uneasiness. Gee, I sure hope nothing pops out at me. You would expect jank to be the only thing working against you, except there is another feature that was developed originally to work around system limitations: stationary camera and tank controls. What was once a solution for a lack of rendering power eventually became a design choice, one that modern devs like Puppet Combo use to make it more difficult to know what's coming. Riddle me this, Batman. What was once alive but no longer is because its confidence was misguided by delusion? You, because you didn't see that giant bunny walking towards you. Let me reenact my heart-stopping electric jolt from this situation. Yeah, I don't scream, I just lock up like a goat for some reason. So is this all making sense so far? Oh, it's not? Well, this is what you should take away from this segment. Retro games have the ultimate opportunity to make jank a good thing. Do all of them succeed at this? No. Nothing is absolute, unless you're a Sith. That made my hair even worse. But stick with me. When jank is used as a tool, and is not a result of neglect, it pretty much becomes a mechanic that's used to keep you on edge at all times. Looking at a game like Inscription, which is a game where you spend most of your time in a single chair, you're made to feel uneasy because this sausage-fingered freak is sitting across from you and you can't even see what he is. It is dark, but the use of the retro graphics forces your brain to fill in the blanks. This pretty much takes over your imagination and forces your brain to create a monster that you specifically would find terrifying. Combine the brain hacking with the mechanical jank, and you got yourself a good combination for dookie pants. A lot of higher budget modern horror games put a ton of effort into their worlds. Walking around an environment full of a bloody, gory mess with the occasional bobbing for apples is a pretty easy way to build tension and keep a player on edge. Spoiler alert, a lot of indie devs don't have the time, money, or manpower to put the work into building a world like that. Enter low poly resolution. Should have seen that one coming. You probably did. Now you would think that less detail equals less scary and less tense, but that doesn't really seem the case with all retro styled horror games. Does that sound kind of familiar? Because I kind of mentioned this when I was talking about the monster in Inscription. The retro graphics force your brain to craft something that would be unsettling for you specifically. Like if the devs were able to get inside your brain and see what you're afraid of. But this doesn't just apply to the monsters. The environments do require less filling in the blanks, but they excel at being uncanny, which could be worse. I'm not just talking about pixelated blood and guts either. The style's natural flat surfaces with sharp edges, gritty textures, and lighting that just doesn't seem quite right. It all has this weirdness that makes the world feel off, like the feeling of waking up to your sleep paralysis demon. And everything looks familiar, but somehow unfamiliar and hazy at the same time. Not to mention there's no other, or at least very little people around. I think the best way to describe the feeling would be suffocating sense, right? As humans, we prefer normal. When that expectation of normal isn't met, our brains just are sort of suddenly on the fritz. And the result of that is this subtle but constant building of tension and anxiety. On top of all that, we are also social creatures, even the most introverted people like myself. So the lack of people in an albeit uncanny version of a place that our brain is expecting to see people, it obviously adds to the anxiety and tension, making you just want to rip your skin off. Just kidding, this soulless bunny will absolutely do that for you. To this point, I've glazed horror-style retro games like a bathroom at Krispy Kreme. To no one's surprise, I'm sure, I am a member of the Junction now, but not so fast. I and many others do love retro-styled games. However, that does not mean every one of them is a hit. Nor does it mean a game can be poor overall, but that's okay because it's a retro game. No. This is where retro style becomes a double-edged sword. The JANK, the uncanny environments, the lack of other people, instead of adding to the horror experience, can make it completely miserable. Take this game for example. I had an awful time with it. There was no guide of any kind, which normally would be okay, but I couldn't see jack shit half the time. The world was too low poly and too gritty for me to tell where things were and where I was even supposed to be going. So instead of being anxious, I just wanted it to be over. It felt like I was trying not to fall asleep in class with the teacher that's really weird about not falling asleep in class. I cannot stress this enough. I've yet to have this issue with a retro-styled game, but if the game is a stuttery mess or fails with important things like hitbox registration or movement, the fact that it's retro-styled does not give it a free pass to blow chunks, which basically means if low poly equals tool, then good. If low poly is a result of neglect, then bad. And that's your one free coding class for the day. You're welcome. So, does more detailed mean better, scarier, and more tense and anxiety-inducing? Maybe. Bet you didn't see that coming. This whole video, seemed like retro games was going to be a knockout of the park, right? To absolutely nobody's surprise, the game still has to be good as a game to be enjoyable. Throwing together a bucket of gritty shit with low poly does not give the game a free pass on playability. The truth is, a game that uses modern, higher resolution assets likely will do better. It's what most gamers are used to and have come to expect to an extent. In other words, it has less hurdles to cross to become something that people are willing to play. If you take nothing else away from this video, let's just say the indie devs who are producing good to beloved retro-styled horror games deserve a ton of credit. They didn't use low poly as a pass to be lazy. They used it to enhance the player's experience. They crafted games that produce more of a primal level of fear. One that, if we're being honest, it's probably more difficult to achieve with fancy, higher resolution graphics. Ironically, younger me would have never played a retro-style game by choice. I thought the best experiences came from polished, high-budget games. If there's one thing I've learned, is that an indie dev or a small group with a whole lot of love will put a lot more into their projects than a big company with a whole bunch of money. Basically, they're able to do more with way less. Just because something looks outdated doesn't mean it has nothing to offer. So, next time you find yourself turning your nose up to that UNK production, first off, turn your nose back down, you freak. But second, give it a chance. You never know. It could change your view on an entire industry.